Our chronological Bible reading for September 7th is Ezekiel chapters 35 through 37, beginning with a prophecy against Edom, which traces its lineage all the way back to Esau. This is the people of God who chose the flesh, the immediate gratification of the physical body, in place of the eternal covenant of God, exchanging your birthright, who you were created to be, for temporary satisfaction. Judgment is coming against Edom because they maintained a perpetual hatred towards Israel, and instead of helping them, gave them over to destruction by the sword. God says in verse 6, because you did not hate bloodshed, it will pursue you. Once again, this is the law of reaping and sowing at work, people getting back what they give out. In verse 11, God says, I will treat you according to the anger and jealousy that you showed. You rejoiced when they were made desolate, therefore you will also be made desolate. One of the themes in today's reading is how we must allow God to take vengeance, to be the defender. In chapter 36, the attention is turned back towards the mountains of Israel, which could refer to the literal mountains in that nation, but also is a prophetic picture of the important people, the leaders. This could be people like Ezekiel himself and Daniel and those who willingly went off into the exile, not because they wanted to, but because that's what they were told to do by God. They submitted themselves and they were completely and totally humbled, yet chose not to defend themselves. God says in verse 6, in my burning zeal, because you have endured the insults of the nations all around you will endure their own insults. There's tremendous power in remaining humble and refusing to defend ourselves. Instead, those people who allow God to defend them will be exalted. It's not easy when people say unkind things or assume the worst about your motives. But this is one of those trials that God says to rejoice in, because it's through enduring this process, by embracing this difficulty, we learn to be even more humble. We learn patience. Our character is developed, and it's through this process that we are refined and eventually will be glorified. This is the tribulation that is the narrow path that leads to life. This is the way we get our white robes. We bite our tongue. If we are being maligned, we take that heartache to the Lord our God. We talk to him about it, but it's not our place to defend ourselves. It says in verse 9, look, I am on your side. And it's the side of the people who endured the insults, who allowed God to be their defender. When we exalt ourselves, when we stand up for ourselves, God just might say, it's fine. Looks like you've got that. Instead, we cry out to him. He will be our defender, and it's much better to err on the side of humility rather than arrogance if we're not sure where to draw that line. In verse 11, he says, I will make you better off than you were before. Beginning in verse 24 is a prophecy about God drawing the people of Israel back to that land. And while part of this was fulfilled after 70 years of exile, and part of it was fulfilled in 1948 after 2,000 years of not being a nation, we haven't seen this in its totality just yet. Verse 25 says, I will cleanse you from all of your impurities. I'll give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I will place my spirit within you and cause you to follow all of my statutes and carefully observe my ordinances. You will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. The vast majority of Jews today have still not accepted their Messiah. Their eyes haven't yet been opened, and they're not really walking in union with the God of Abraham just yet. This is one prophecy that remains to be fulfilled, and it's something we should be praying for. Not that the Jews convert to Christianity, but that they fulfill the Torah by accepting Yeshua, their Messiah. Chapter 37 is this valley of dry bones, representing death. They were brittle. And God says, Son of man, can life come from these bones? Ezekiel's response is, Yahweh, only you know. And God tells Ezekiel to begin prophesying. There is tremendous power in the spoken word of God through man as his heart is completely and totally yielded to God. And as Ezekiel begins to speak life over these bones, they begin to rattle and shake, and they grow tendons and skin. God says to Ezekiel, prophesy the breath, which could be translated prophesy the wind or prophesy the spirit. And as he does, the breath, the wind, the spirit entered them. They stood on their feet and became a vast army. This is a picture of the people of God coming back from the dead. It's a vision of the nation of Israel being made spiritually alive when it seemed as though there was no hope. When it seemed as though it was impossible, the word of God went forth and the will of God was fulfilled. In the same way Ezekiel saw this 2,600 years ago, many of us today, I believe, will in the coming years see this prophecy fulfilled as the Hebrew people go back to their roots. As the blinders come off, they will see the truth that their Messiah has been hidden from them. And then there will be unity between the Jew and the Gentile alike who are believers in Messiah. What began as a first fruits 2,000 years ago will culminate in the last day. Together, the two nations will become one. God will be glorified. All of his enemies will be appalled. And for 1,000 years, his people will reign together under his leadership for his glory, for the fulfillment of his kingdom. And God says he will establish them and multiply them and set his sanctuary among them forever. God bless you, my friends, and let's bless his holy name together. May he accomplish all of this, and may we live to see it, how glorious it's going to be. See you tomorrow.